This is the Garage Gym Athlete Podcast, and we're here to build autonomous athletes and put phenomenal programming into every garage, basement, and spare bedroom out there. I'm Jerred Moon, and I'm with Joe Courtney. We are strength and conditioning coaches who have turned over 20,000 people into garage gym athletes over the last decade. And we're here to reduce the information overload that exists in the health and fitness industry today. We're going to do that by covering relevant science and give actionable takeaways, not only from the data, but from our years of experience. So let's dive in. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Garage Gym Athlete Podcast. Jerred Moon here with Joe Courtney. What's up, Joe?
Man, just hanging out my gym, as you can see.
It looks very realistic. These green screen backgrounds are getting better and better. I'll let the few people who watch it on YouTube, as opposed to listen to it, decide whether or not my background is real. What do you think? Looks pretty real.
Not very realistic.
No, it's fake. All right, let's get into it. What are we talking about today? We're going to be talking about odd objects, and here's why. So I would say odd objects or unconventional training is really what we're discussing. Because if you are a garage gym athlete, it's going to happen at some point. If it hasn't already happened to you, you're going to be like, "Ooh, yeah, I think all I need for the rest of my life is a sandbag, a kettlebell, and a mace, and I can do all the things." And you'll see some people like that on social media. They train that way, and I want to discuss kind of the pros and cons, limitations, all these kind of things about this style of training, because I do think if you are a true garage gym athlete, and what I mean by true garage gym athlete is you like to train in the elements, you like to push yourself hard, you like to, train in the garage when it's hot or cold or whatever, then you might have a little bit more of that mentality to use some odd objects or do some unconventional training. Joe and I have some experience with it. Also want to dive into some of the science behind it and, like I said, some of the limitations and also some of the pros, like the benefits to training that way. Before we get into that, today, Joe, how's training? You old man.
Well, I'm on the mend. Things are getting better
injury-wise. I find because he's hurt all the time.
All the time. If you're not hurt, you're not trying.
I think that's if you're not cheating, you're not trying.
I'll just make my own spin on things.
It works.
I finally went to the doctor to get all my stuff looked at, so I'm seeing 3 different doctors for my 3 different things that are going on. So already getting some, I guess, steps in the right direction. Wrist, I'm seeing an OT, just working on some wrist strengthening and stuff. That's already going a little better. I just got dry needled today for my shoulder, so hopefully that has big ramifications. In the past, I've gotten dry needled and always had really good results from it to really, really help free, just loosen things up so I actually move. So it kind of hurts, but I only just got needled today, so I have a follow-up next week. And my heel, I haven't seen the doctor yet. They did x-rays on it. I know the results, but I'll wait to share them for a couple weeks when I actually have the appointment with the ortho. But my heel doesn't hurt really at all for running. So I'm running to my heart's content, whatever I want to do for runs. So that's been going good. So kind of on the mend. The shoulder is the biggest pain, literally pain right now, and limitation. Makes upper body days really hard to do. But luckily I have resources of the main on base gym where I can do at least, some machine things. I have a lot more equipment at my disposal to use for certain exercises just to at least get some upper body work in. So still good. All good. Runs good. Yeah,
man, shoulder injuries are the worst. Well, shoulder, low back, knee, those are all you find out how much you use them.
Those are the worst.
once they're what else could be hurt that's not going to be bad, but those are really bad. Also, when your abs are really sore. Have you ever had really, really sore abs and then you realize that you use your abs for basically every movement throughout the day?
Yeah, it was a couple weeks ago. I did, again, on base, I used the GHD, did sit-ups. Every time I use those, it's they kill. And I did them, and 2 days later, I was I'm going to do a row workout. And the first time I pulled back on the rower, you're extended back, and then you're oh my God, I'm using my abs way. Yeah, I'm using my abs way too much for this rowing.
Well, speaking of that, I don't have a lot to update on training other than I'm getting it all in. I have been kind of doing the last cycle, right? I'm not doing the current cycle. So like more of the body geo stuff with running. And I don't know, man, I might just make that like a new garage gym athlete life track where it's just like body geo on repeat and like some intervals and running or whatever. I enjoy that training so much and I feel so good when I'm doing it. It's like never too much. So that's just like my favorite style of training. And after the runs, I've been sticking with using that freak athlete thing to get GHD sit-ups in. And my abs have grown accustomed to it. It's funny, like what you're talking about. Like if you haven't done them in a while, GHD sit-ups will light you up. And like I had that for the first 1 to 2 times I use it, and now it's like I'm pretty accustomed to them, and it's not like my abs aren't getting that sore after I do a bunch of GHD sit-ups, which is good. I'm doing a lot of Nordic curls after runs and all these kind of things. And I mean, Nordic curls, it might be one of the hardest exercises on the planet. And what's crazy though is like my hamstrings have definitely gotten weaker because I remember me and my friend used to do Nordic curls. He would just hold my legs down. Like we would hold each other's legs down and do them that way. And I could do them like pretty easily. Now they are super challenging. Like it feels like my hamstrings are like ripping off when I go down and then come back up. But really good for the
I've definitely gotten
hamstrings.
scared a few times doing those where I'm like holding myself down. It's like, this is really, really painful. I don't know if I want to keep on clenching this because I don't want anything to tear because it
Is
kind
it
of feels,
going to
it almost
snap?
feels like it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the cool thing about the freak athlete machine, again, talking about it again, free exposure for them, but nothing for us. We're not trying to push it. But you can do Nordic curls at different angles. So like you could do a 45-degree Nordic curl. And then like slowly lower it down. And that's actually where I started. Not at 45 degrees, but I started at an angle because I was like, sure, I can do a couple like full Nordic curls, like with it flat, but I would rather do like 10, 12, 15 or something like that. So I put it at an angle to get a lot more reps in. And that's been really good. Trying to keep those hamstrings strong because I was at a sporting event for my son last night. It's crazy, man. It's William. He's the oldest, and they basically have a combine here in the in for his grade, and it's insanity, man. They make him run 40s, all this kind of stuff, and then they do a draft after that to see which team you're gonna end up on based off of your performance. It's just it's crazy. Texas is crazy with their football.
It's exciting for the kids, I guess, but I mean,
Yeah,
pros have proved
it's
that.
cool, but like it's not like for show. That's what I think is crazy. Is like, and I grew up here. Just so I'm not talking about Texans like, oh, you know, those weird Texans. I just moved here from California. It's like I grew up in Texas, like, and I still find it odd sometimes, like some of the things that go on here with football. And I played football in Texas, all this stuff. Anyway, he was doing it. They did all these 40 times. Pretty cool to see all the kids do it. But then an adult did it at the very end. What do you think happened?
Blew his hamstring.
Yep. Right. Like 20 yards into the 40-yard dash. And I was like, dude, I'm leaving. Like I could have told you that was going to happen, but that's what I don't want to happen to me. Not that I'm going to be doing, well, my kids ask me to do random stuff like that. And I'm getting to the point where I'm like a little bit nervous. Like if we go out and I'm like, I run all the time. I exercise a lot. I'm like, but I don't do 40s that often, you know? So like, I'm always a little bit scared I'm going to pull my hamstring, just messing around.
You got to do a rolling start, like a 10-meter rolling start. And then at 10 and then to the 50 or whatever, a rolling start 40.
Yeah. But then my time won't be good. My kids will be very disappointed in me. So
who's timing you?
My kids.
Okay.
That's the only reason they'd want to do it.
Sticklers.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's get into some odd object training, unconventional training. And like I said, the main reason I wanted to discuss this was just because I know it comes around. Like everybody, you either see it, you get interested in it, and you might think like, oh, could I just do kettlebell training for the rest of my life and be good? You know, maybe. Depends on kind of what your goals are. But one thing that I found really interesting, and I want to start with kettlebell training specifically, is I've always been interested in and I've talked about this a little bit on the podcast, but like the force of a kettlebell, like say you're flipping kettlebells and catching them and all these kind of things, right? Like that takes a lot of force, takes a lot of power. And what's interesting about that is if we were to actually calculate it out, and I did calculate it out, or I had it calculated out. If you convert like a moving swinging kettlebell, 70 pounds from 5 feet, to like catch a kettlebell or to stop its force is 389, let's call it 390 pounds of force when you catch it. So like if you flip it, or if it's like it'd have to be falling at its rate. So if you were controlling it a little bit on the way down, which I don't think a lot of people do on a kettlebell swing, but if you were, this would not be true. But that reverse motion, that stopping, like stop, now we got to go the other way kettlebell, you know what I mean? Like on a swing. I've always been interested in that because I know just from thinking of it, I'm like, this is explosive. There has to be a lot of power generated here. So calculate it out. It's nearly 390 pounds. This is a 70-pound kettlebell, 390 pounds of force at that reverse engineer. Like we're stopping it. We're moving in a different direction. Now, and so that's the same amount of force. Like if you were to just have 390 pounds on a barbell and you were lowering it down and squatting back up, that's the same. Your body doesn't actually know the difference. But what the difference is that 390-pound force from the kettlebell is only it's a fraction of a second, right? So it's like if we were to like graph this on a chart, it would be like 70 pounds, boop, spike up to 390 pounds of force, and then it'd come back down, right? And it wouldn't come like, it wouldn't go down to zero, whatever, right? It would just like the force would come down. So you don't have that muscle under tension like you would a 390-pound back squat, but you do see that level of power output. And that's what's always had me interested in kettlebell training, because if you're not worried about the mechanical tension side of things with the barbell, like you're not trying to be a power lifter, you're not trying to, like, say you don't even care about like gaining muscle mass, you're just like, I want athleticism, I want power development, then a kettlebell can get you there with a lot less chance of injury. And that's why I've always thought it was cool, because if you can get to swinging around some heavy kettlebells and doing it safely, you get to see these huge spikes in force and power output over and over again without this like loaded spine, 390-pound back squat, lowering it, going back up, which I'm not saying is a bad thing. I'm just saying like you need to know what you're training for. And so that's what's always had me interested in like keeping my eye on all these other things. But there's kettlebell training, there's Mace, there's Sandbag, there's strongman stuff. But I guess I'll ask you in general, Joe, like what are your opinions of that kind of training? Like, what do you think of it? Where do you think its place is for like a garage gym athlete?
I think you can, I don't think if you're new to working out of the gym or working out at home or whatever, I don't think this is something you should be throwing in, because it's already almost like a bit of a shiny object. And I think it fills in some holes that you might not have for other stuff like with the barbell that you have. And also it provides sort of a nice variety to it. And there's definitely some, a lot of them that I like to keep doing in training, like weighted carries, sandbag carries. When I was with Strength Track, I program a lot of bear hug, whether it's with a sandbag or even like a med ball. Like bear hug, I think is fantastic movement, moving with the weight, and it really helps strengthen your mid to upper back, which tends to fail a lot with some of these heavier lifts anyway. Kettlebell stuff, I mean, I don't even consider that an odd object, even though it technically is.
Yeah,
because to me, it's just a staple.
It's almost its own thing. There's like strongman, there's like unconventional odd object, and then there's like it's just kettlebell training. Some people just train with kettlebells, like kettlebell only. Like what are your thoughts on that? Like if you were to only train with a kettlebell for the rest of your life, do you think that it would limit you in any way?
No, I've seen some of those kettlebell sport people. Actually, there's a guy in the gym here. I think I've only seen him a handful of times, and he'll do a bunch of kettlebell clean and presses, and like it's pretty impressive how they do those, because they're not just doing like 1 or 2 reps of clean and press. They're like doing 4 reps, like lots and lots of reps, double digit reps of whatever it's clean and presses, 2 at once, and the core support that you have to do that, and then also just like the stability and control is definitely impressive. I mean, I can sling a kettlebell around, but I can't do some of the stuff that they're doing, especially with like shoulder mobility or other issues.
Yeah, the kettlebell sports stuff is like real high on the muscular endurance and even aerobic endurance because I'm not to be honest, I've seen the sport, but I don't actually know how the competition goes. But I know it's like I know they're doing a lot of reps, and they're
I think
typically
they're doing like max reps for 30 seconds or something.
they're doing a ton. Yeah, I think as far as like all that kind of stuff, like of all the things, like if we're talking about Mace, Sandbag, whatever, I think kettlebell kind of sits on top of this pyramid. So if we were to kind of start framing, putting out a framework for people who want to get into these things, the first thing Joe said, I 100% agree with, is it's something I would add. I would only view all of these things as accessory. Like, and I think that's why some people, they're like, oh, I found out about kettlebell training. Should I only do kettlebells or should I only swing a mace or do sandbag? It's like, let's not be so polarized. Like, let's have well-rounded training. And if you want to add these things in, like, let's do it. And that's honestly like, if you look at our body geometry programming, if you were to just like take a snapshot of one workout from body geometry, you might be like, oh, well, this is kind of almost like power building, where it's like we have some hypertrophy stuff in there, we have some like more powerlifting stuff. So it's like it's that. But what we've thrown in there that kind of separates it from that thing is some of those things. There'll be a sandbag squat in there. There will be a kettlebell swing in there. There will be a Turkish get up. There will be all these other kind of movements in there because they're great accessory movements and they really work the body in different ways that you're not going to see if you were to just be doing hypertrophy bodybuilding style stuff or just powerlifting stuff. So it's great for accessory. I don't think, unless you were truly to get into kettlebell sport, I don't think it's the best for most people, like you're saying, Joe, to start and be like, yeah, this is a sport I'm getting into, because you're missing, I feel like you're skipping so many steps. But the kettlebell kind of sits on top of like, it can really do everything. Its only limitation, in my opinion, the kettlebell will be hypertrophy. Like if you're looking to gain muscle mass, I mean, I could make an argument. I could make any kind of argument that you could do that with body weight, that you could do that with a kettlebell. You absolutely can't. There are ways to program it and execute it to where you can gain muscle mass. I'm not going to say it's impossible, but is it a way easier to gain muscle mass if you're using a straight barbell or something else like heavy loaded things? Yeah, it's going to be way easier to gain muscle mass if you're not afraid to move a barbell or some dumbbells or something else that's just a little bit more structured. So the kettlebell is kind of the king of these movements. You could almost train with it by itself. In fact, I think, we've asked that question 1,000 times. If you could only have one piece of equipment to train with for the rest of your life, what would it be? What's your answer right now? It can be different every time. Christ. Is it going to be a kettlebell?
Well, my argument always with the kettlebell is it's not fair if the barbell gets all the weight. So the kettlebell, I feel like I need a rack of kettlebells, or a kettlebell that you can at least
say you had a rack of kettlebells or a barbell with all the plates. What would you pick? I think that would be very showing of like your opinion of the two.
Probably at this point, probably the kettlebells.
Yeah.
Even though they suck more to use for sure. Like if I were to look at a workout and be like, this workout has our barbells or this workout has our kettlebells, I'd be like, man, that kettlebell workout looks terrible. But it's probably the better one.
Yeah. I think I'd do the same if I had the choice. If it was like barbell with plates or a bunch of different kettlebells, yeah, I'd probably choose a kettlebell. But then once we step down from kettlebell, my opinion starts to change of all these things. Like I do love kettlebells and I think that they're great and you can do almost everything. Like if you're looking to be athletic, powerful, but stay away from Olympic lifting, because again, Olympic lifting is great. It's just like golf. It's like it's really freaking hard to get good at. You can have a bad day. You know what I'm saying? Like golf is just an incredibly frustrating sport. I know you know that, and I feel like that's the same with like the snatch and the clean and jerk. So like if you want to get a lot of those benefits, kettlebell training is where it's at now. But then when we get into these other ones, like what's your opinion of? I think a step down from there would be like sandbag training. What's your opinion of sandbag training?
So when I first got the Sandbag, and I know a lot of people have this same mentality when they get the Sandbag, because a lot of them, especially the bigger ones, they're gonna have all the handles, and then you see the handles on the side, and you're like, oh, you can do cleans. And it's like, oh, awesome, I can do Sandbag cleans. First time you do a Sandbag clean, you're like, this is not the same. It completely like you go to
Yeah.
pull like you would a barbell, and it's like, oh, well, my knees hit the Sandbag, so now I have to like pull with my arms before I have to shorten the
Yeah.
length of my arms, and then I can kind of do the power movement, and then I
Or
can kind
figure
of
out how
get
to take
under it.
all the slack out of the bag so it's like acts like
Yeah.
a barbell, you know?
Yeah, and I'm like, all right, this is not the same thing. So for that, like it's not quite the same. Presses, I think are can be kind of cool, but I like using them as a unbalanced piece of weight. Like I can use this as something that's going to be heavier than a kettlebell. So instead of holding like one kettlebell, you can have a sandbag on one shoulder or across both shoulders to go for a walk. You can do squats with them to either side because you're going to be a little bit imbalanced. Bear hugs, I said I liked that a lot. So those things, I think it's definitely an in between thing that you could use to work out a lot of your body, mostly the lower and the and your core.
Yeah. I think the sandbag is great. I do have a love-hate relationship with a sandbag. Um, so I don't even remember the brand I have, but yeah, it's one like you're saying. It's got all these different handles on the bag, and then I have three inserts in there, so I think it goes up to like 150 pounds. I think each bag that goes inside is a 50-pound bag. And you can do some legit stuff. It can get where sandbag training gets frustrating is if you do try and treat it like barbell training. If you're like, I can just do all the same stuff with a barbell, but I'm just going to do it with sandbag. It's like, not really, because like to your point, it's like the clean is different. Even the presses sometimes, I feel like my bag got stretched out, so like I feel like I get like 8-9 inches into the range of motion before the resistance even comes, and so then
Yeah.
it's just like a almost like a partial lift. Like I'm like, I only have 4 to 5 inches of resistance when I'm actually lifting it overhead. But I do like it for like throwing something on the ground, picking it back up, whether that's a sandbag or like a medicine ball. And carrying around, I think for loaded walks, loaded carries, a sandbag is like top of that food chain. Lunges, and I do think it's good to get training like to not be so symmetrical. You know, asymmetrical is a great way to train. Like whether you're doing that on purpose by training unilaterally, so like you're doing one leg movements, pistols, shrimp squats, or you're doing lunges, those kind of things in your own training, or you're loading a sandbag on your right shoulder and doing a squat, or then loading on the left shoulder and doing a squat. So the sandbag is great because where it is better than the kettlebell, like you're saying, is like you can get a little bit more load. You can't get as much load as a barbell, but you can get more load, and it challenges you in a different way. I've heard the argument that some people say like it works all these different muscles and stuff, and I haven't seen that as much. I haven't seen like I feel like if you are an experienced lifter in general, like with barbells or kettlebells or anything else, you find a way to stabilize your body the same way that you would anything else, any other apparatus, and it just might take like 1 or 2 training sessions to learn. So I don't feel like there's all that balance and coordination. I don't feel like that's there with a sandbag. I think people make that argument, but I haven't seen that. I don't feel like it's there. I think if you're talking about like we're getting really unconventional, like slosh pipe, which when's the last time you saw anybody train with a slosh pipe?
Oh
Like,
man,
am I like the
I
only
don't think
person you've ever
anybody.
seen with a slosh
Yeah,
pipe?
right. Well,
uh,
in researching this, actually, it's kind of funny. There was an article that the Air Force Academy did back in 2008 or 2003, something like that, and they were training their athletes with it was a bucket full of water, and they were having to do squats and other movements with a
oh
bucket, like
gosh.
like a barrel full of water. I was like, that would be tough. So like not as that's lost pipe. It gets out of control. It's like 1 or 2 drops one way, and you lost it.
Yeah. So if
But
anybody's
yeah,
unfamiliar with the slosh pipe, because this we're just talking unconventional training or odd objects today. And if you want to know how to build one, Google End of 3 Fitness DIY slosh pipe or End of 3 Fitness slosh pipe. You will find me in my project of doing a slosh pipe. But what it is basically a large PVC pipe. This is probably a 6-inch PVC pipe, if I had to guess, 4 to 6 inches. They're fairly thick. And then you cap one end. So you just fully cap it with PVC cement. And then the other one is like a rubber end that you can tighten down so you can change the amount of water in there. And I don't remember. I think I put in the article like what I did, but like I loaded it up at first. I was like, I'm strong. Like I'm just gonna put a bunch of water in this thing. Dude, a slosh pipe will kick your ass all over the place. And you can't do anything about it. Doesn't matter how strong you are. And so I ended up having to let so much water out of that thing and using a very small amount. But a slosh pipe is so fun to use because of what you're saying. Like that water moves around so much. So that if we're talking about stabilization muscles and like, all those kind of things firing, which also helps with like growth hormone release and other things. A slosh pipe, and I didn't mean to go jump straight to slosh pipe because I did want to talk about like other unconventional items, but a slosh pipe, anything that has water in it is insanity. Like they're very hard to train with, very frustrating to train with, but really good for you overall. A lot of fun if you're looking to add something like new. And I don't know if they're supposed to be a certain length, but the one I had, I think it was like 10 feet long. It was like
insanely big.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't even know why I did that. I was like, maybe
you're
it came
you.
in
I
that
mean,
size, and I didn't want to
you
like
didn't want to
cut it, but like the water runs, whatever 5 feet away from you. It's like it's very hard. It's hard just to walk with.
Yeah.
So like not let alone like doing presses and everything else. So slosh pipe's really cool. But going back to sandbag, sandbag doesn't get you that kind of stimulus like you would with a slosh pipe, but it is good overall. Any comments on the slosh pipe?
I remember it was super hard. We took it out for a walk one day, a long time ago, one of the early days of one of our meetings, and yeah, it was rough. I've kind of always wanted one, but we moved so much that I think it's just an awkward thing to have and refill. And so one day when we move back to the States, maybe that'll be something that I add. I'm not going to make it mine as big. Maybe I'll do it a little thinner piping as well, just so I can do more presses or something. Yeah,
I think I might build another one. Such an inexpensive project too. It's like
yeah.
if you have if money is the excuse that you can't exercise, go get a slosh pipe. That's like the cheapest thing that you could do and probably one of the hardest things. Okay, but let's step down now. So we have kettlebell kind of sits at the top of this. It's almost its own thing. Then we get into sandbags. I'd probably put medicine balls into that kind of like, just round bags of dirt, whatever you want to call it. Like they're all kind of the same to me. But then if we like go down a step lower, I feel like it really broadens out to like, what do you think of Mace training? And have you done much of it?
I have not. I've never touched a mace. Every time I've seen it and them doing it, it kind of like I think, okay, that looks cool, but I also feels like that would hurt my shoulder a lot because you're usually spinning it around or they're doing all kinds of things. I know it requires some coordination, though. I'm sure it's not hard to learn. There's definitely a little bit of a gimmicky factor to it, but I think it'd be fun to use every once in a while. But I never even considered or thought of buying one.
Yeah, I have used a mace, like a legit mace before, and I also do mace stuff with a sledgehammer sometimes. So I have that sledgehammer.
Sledgehammer's fun.
Yeah, like I have a sledgehammer, and I'll do like mace swings with a sledgehammer. Granted, my sledgehammer is only 10 pounds, and some of these mace swings, people are doing 30, 40, 50, 60 pounds with the mace swings. So I'm very familiar with the movement and how it works. My only thing with that is like having done some of it, like if you're in the category of I do mace training, like if you want to make that decision, I think that you're leaving so much on the table. Like, and that's where I think like the limitations really creep up with the kettlebells. It's kind of like, well, it's really just like maybe hypertrophy. Sandbags, I'm like, well, power is probably a little bit harder. That's probably its limitation, but you can get a lot of other stuff and you could probably actually do a little bit more hypertrophy than you can with the kettlebell. But then we step down to like, okay, let's talk about maces. If you don't view that as an accessory movement, I think that you're damaging all sorts of results that you could be seeing because the mace it doesn't do a lot. Like you can't do a lot with it. And I'm sure some mace expert could hop on here and be like, I could kick your ass with a mace. Like, yeah, dude, I'm sure you could have a good workout, but there's a lot of benefit to it. Similar to kettlebell training, there's some power development, good for your shoulders after you get used to it. I think it actually would probably be more rehabilitation for your shoulder if you were to able to do that. And then also like a lot of trunk core stability, those kind of things. but it's just so limiting after that. It's just so limiting. There's not a lot you can do. Like I've seen people do these weird like slow presses with it and stuff. I'm like, just get a freaking barbell or a kettlebell or something. Like I understand what you want to do, but like a very, very limiting piece of equipment, but cool. And I'm not against it at all. I just think it should really only be seen as an accessory apparatus.
Also, like completely neglects the lower body.
Yeah, well, that's my bigger problem too. Like if we're talking about any of these things, if we're talking about kettlebells, sandbags, mace training, what do you do with your legs? Like honestly, if all you did was kettlebell swings or kettlebell squats, goblet squats, you won't have strong legs. Like you might have good muscular endurance legs, but they're not going to be strong and powerful. I honestly, the only way that you could probably do that is with a barbell. And that's me saying that after like having that back injury where I couldn't lift with a barbell. And I'm like, how am I going to train my legs? And like I tried it with a kettlebell, I tried it with body weight. And there are ways to like work the legs out. Don't get me wrong, but like none of it is as good as just a barbell. Like if I had to, if you were like, hey, I'm going to give you an hour and a half kettlebell specific leg workout, and that's what you can do, or you can just do barbell walking lunges for 10 minutes, and that's the only workout you can do for the legs for the rest of your life. And the kettlebell's got all these different movements, all this stuff's an hour and a half long versus 10 minutes of or barbell walking lunges. I'm going to choose barbell walking lunges where I can control the weight because I just think this would be better for my legs, make them stronger. It's unilateral movement, like, and I can go heavier. So like, I think that if you want strong legs, you can forget all the things that we're talking about. You can't really do any of this stuff. But yeah, you're right on that. Mace, and all these things kind of neglect the lower body.
Yeah, and like, so what would you say is, because it's all with odd object, what would you say is one thing that's kind of links all this together that has a benefit that they all share?
The benefit that they all share is athleticism, power development. Like, and that I put those in the same category. That's one thing to me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you're just doing bicep curls, cool, you're gonna get a bigger bicep. And if you're just trying to grow muscle, there's ways to do that, but you lose athleticism. It's like at the expense of your athleticism and power. So I think all of these things increase a lot of power, which is a good thing. That's why I love them to be in the program, but not be the program, because I don't want to lose power. I want to maintain my athleticism. So keeping power, that's thing number one. Thing number two would be, let's just call it like different planes of movement. Because that's another thing. I think when we're only moving in one plane of movement, running, bicep curls, up and down squat, up and down deadlift, right? We're only in that same plane over and over again. All these other things that we're talking about kind of force you outside of that thing, outside of that. So like if we're doing Turkish get-ups or kettlebell swings or around the worlds, or we're doing Cossack squats or different things with a sandbag, with a mace swing, it kind of forces that. And I think that honestly helps you become more resilient to injury when you are training outside of different planes of movement. So those would be the two biggest benefits, I'd say, to these odd objects, unconventional training methodologies and stuff. What do you think?
So I guess my two would be the somewhat related. The one that was related is it definitely forces you to really concentrate and perform on what you're doing. You can't just because you can do lifting with good form, but then you're just doing form. But when you're doing anything with the sandbag, you have to like really dial in everything and pay attention to how you're moving everywhere. And when you're swinging, you can't just you can't just use your arms or something. You have to use everything and really brace everything that you're doing, which leads me to the main thing that I think these are all beneficial for, and that's the core and your trunk.
Yeah.
I think it does all sides all around totally of your trunk than like V-ups or sit-ups are going to do, because that's just going to target right here, or planks. Like that's why I really like a lot of these odd object ones, and what I really put into the strength track with your bear hug carries. I like doing front rack walking carries with the kettlebell to switch arms and all those things, just because I think the core that you get from it, and like even personally, I hate V-ups and working the core and working the abs. I'd
Right.
rather take a sandbag for a walk. for 10, 15 minutes or something. I'd rather do a front rack carry. Regularly when we were in Monterey, I would end my workout with farmer's carry. I do a loop around the small block on my house. I would, go to fatigue on one hand, set it down, switch to the other hand, go to fatigue on that hand, and just walk around the house that way with a single kettlebell, just taking it for a weighted carry.
Yeah. And all these things are great. And hopefully, as we kind of wrap this up, I don't sound like I dislike any of these things. Let me be very clear. They're all awesome. They all serve a purpose, but it's not like you have to go down this dark tunnel because you saw somebody's Instagram and you're like, oh, all they do is train with the kettlebell. And to be honest, most of these people don't. Like if you really got into their training, they're still lifting a barbell. Like they're still doing other things. They just really like kettlebell training and emphasize it. So you don't have to go down this route. It's not like, oh, I'm the kettlebell guy now and I swing maces and do kettlebells. It's like I've seen a lot of people kind of do that, and I never really understand why. And it could be pure interest. Like if you're just like, if that's it, you're like, I'm just more interested in these things, but don't act like they're superior to like a well-rounded training that has, training all the different energy systems, has a barbell in it, has power development, has a lot of body weight, skill development, all of these kind of things. Like you can have a very well-rounded program and still utilize all these instruments to see a lot of results. So I think they're all good in conjunction of a really good program, but to go down and do it solely by itself, I don't think it's the best idea if you want to maintain like a good amount of strength and power, speed, all those kind of things, while also, being healthy and live longer. So that's my take. You got anything else, Joe?
Yeah, I think every gym, your own gym, should have probably minimum 2 kettlebells. After that, whether it's more kettlebells, sandbag, anything like that, just think of those things as extra fun things to add into. As far as workout construction, these things typically you're going to throw in at the end of your workout, which just shows the priority of how you should, in my opinion, the priority of which you should have in your gym, because it's going to be the accessory core extra, athletic things that you're doing after your main body of your majors and even your minors.
I agree. All right. We'll get out of here on that note. Let us know what you think in the community about odd objects, unconventional training, kettlebell, all these kind of things. What experience you have. We'd love to hear for you in the Garage Gym Athlete community. For all of you a part of the community, really appreciate you being there, following the training. If you want to be a part of it, go to garagegymathlete.com, sign up for a free trial, and we would love to have you. But that's it for this one. Remember, if you don't kill comfort, comfort will kill you.